We are in Genesis chapter 13 this morning, and we've made it about as far as verse 4. But last week we looked at how Abraham, there was a famine in the land. And God had called him to the land, but it wasn't being supplied in the land, so he left the land, went down to Egypt. Not always the best idea. Leave where God's asking you to go. And he risked everything down there. Honey, would you lie for me and tell him you're my sister, which is a half-truth, but it's a whole lie. And, she gets taken into the harem, and God has to plague Pharaoh to keep him away from her. And then he figures it out. And Pharaoh comes and rebukes Abraham. What are you doing? What are you thinking? Why'd you put me into this trip? Why'd you give me the botch? When it's your issue, when it's your problem. And here's the thing, we get in places sometimes where we think God is not supplying us. Maybe it's in your marriage, maybe it's in your job, maybe it's in your church, maybe who knows where. Maybe you got this pastor and it's like, come on, give us a real pastor. I totally get that, but here's the thing. It's a lie. God is supplying you. God has you right where he wants you to be. And he desires us to be fully dependent upon him. And most of the time we're semi-dependent on him, and we're mostly dependent on us, and that's not a good way to go. The same God who called you, the same God who saved you, he is the God who is over your condition, over your place right now. He's supplying you. But I need more of this. I need better of that. I need this. Well, take it up with him. Right? Don't run off to Egypt. Don't run off to the world. Try to get yourself, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, and he will bring you that supply. Man does not live by bread alone. It's not this substance. It's not this material stuff. 1 Timothy 6:6 says, godliness with contentment is great gain. That's where we need to be standing. So Abraham, his faith is tested. He sees a lack. He runs down to Egypt. Not the most smart thing to do. He gets rebuked. He comes back. And he makes his way back to that place, Bethel. Where he camped, where he had Bethel on the right and Ai on the left. And, Bethel, the house of God. Ai, the heap of ruin. And right in the middle there somewhere, we have our tent and we have our altar, just like Abraham had. We live between heaven and hell. We live between the church and the world. We live in this kind of semi-ugly place, and we've got to have that altar. We've got to have that place where we're connected, where we're plugged in. And it's at that place where he calls again on the name of the Lord. And it's interesting. It's on the name of the L, capital O, capital R, capital E. It's Yahweh, it's Jehovah. He hasn't even been introduced yet. He doesn't get introduced until Moses introduces him. So it makes you wonder, what does Abraham know here? What kind of relationship is there? Anyway, we pick it up in verse 5. Chapter 13 of Genesis, verse 5. Lot also went with Abram and had flocks and herds and tents. Notice there's no altar there. Abraham, every place he goes, there's an altar. Lot, not necessarily so. We remember that Abraham in Egypt, he picked up some extra supplies. His wife was just about to be, Pharaoh's next wife. And so he was treated like a brother-in-law, and he was getting all this stuff from Pharaoh in Egypt. And so now they're overloaded with stuff. It says in verse 7, and there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. And the Canaanites and the Perizzites dwelt in the land. I always love those little inserts. Oh yeah, there's Canaanites and Perizzites. There's always parasites. Oh, these are with Z's, sorry. the strife starts up. They are living in the desert. And if any of you have ever been to Israel or Jordan or in that area, you know what the desert really looks like. It doesn't look like this place out here. You know, this is desert, sure enough, but there's sagebrush and grasses and all kinds of stuff out here. You go there and you see the sheep out there on a hill, and they get their heads down and they're gnawing away, and you're thinking, what are they eating? Are they eating the sand? What in the world are they eating out there? God's initial call on Abraham was, leave your family, leave your father's house, come to the place. But he drags everybody along. He drags his nephew Lot, and it's nice of him to do that. But he gets into trouble with his partial obedience. And something has to be done. Because the Canaanites and the Perizzites are watching these two. They claim to be worshipers of the one true and living God. And here's the world. Here's evil. Here's the yuck that is out there. And they're watching these two guys going, they're calling on the name of the Lord, that one God. We call on all kinds of names of gods out here. And believers aren't supposed to be in strife with one another. Right? It's not supposed to be contention between believers. I've never seen it personally, never happened around here, But some unbelievers will never listen to you about Jesus because of what some believer has acted like or been like, That's our problem. We got to deal with that in this house. Now, God does use strife at times. We think about the New Testament, and there was strife between Paul and Barnabas. You remember? The strife got so heavy that they separated from one another. Should we take John Mark? Well, of course we should. Well, heck no, we're not, because he left us. And we get all caught up. Well, who was right? Who was wrong? Was Paul right? Was Barnabas right? Which one? We're supposed to love one another. All of that stuff. And the answer is, who was right? Yes. That's the answer. Because God took one missionary group and he formed two. He got twice the missionary effort out of the same little group. So in verse 8, so Abraham said to Lot, please let there be no strife between us. Notice this, he's the elder, he's the mature one, he's the one that God is speaking to, he's the one that all the promises came to. Look at the graciousness of this guy. Abraham says to Lot, please let there be no strife between you and me, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are brethren. Is not the whole land before you? Please, separate from me. If you take the left, I will go to the right, or if you go to the right, I will go to the left. It should have been the other way around. It should have been Lot, the nephew, the younger one, saying, hey, Uncle, where would you want me to go? How would you want me to go? But Abraham deals here in grace, in love. Shouldn't this be the way we should be with one another when we walk out of those doors? Shouldn't it be that way? We are brethren, The whole land is before us. Let us not argue. Let us not have strife. Let us not, bicker and be in contention with one another. Abraham could have said, all of this stuff is mine. God gave it to me. You have nothing to do with this, He didn't even say, you go over there, or you go over there. He doesn't do any of that. He says, you choose. What amazing grace that is. Abraham is living a life down here with his feet on earth, but his head is in heaven. His head is looking, what would the Lord do? What does God want me to do? How does he want me to go about and do this stuff? Romans chapter 12. Here's a call to us. Be kindly affectionate towards one another in brotherly love, in honor giving preference to one another, not lagging in diligence. Don't lag about in that. Don't put it off. Fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. Those three things, not lagging in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, goes back to being kindly, affectionate, putting other people first before you. Oh, that takes a lot of effort. I don't know if you've tried to do that, It takes some humility to put yourself second, to put yourself under somebody else. And that is the Spirit's job in our life. Oh, we've got to respond to Him, But Abe is growing in faith. He's learning, He knew that whatever Lot chose, God would bless him more. God would supply him greatly wherever else it was. You remember the promise. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. He's standing on that promise. It takes faith to stand there. But Abe is stretching his little legs of faith. He's just a new believer. How long's it been? 3, 4, 5 years? I don't know. Abe is learning to let go. He's learning not to grasp hold of stuff, but to let go. Lot is learning how to hang on. He sees it and he wants to grasp it. Abraham goes, it's out there. Let's go for it. And that will determine what happens in their families. That has a major impact on what happens to Lot's family and what happens to Abram's family. And it has a major impact on our witness to the ites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the termites, whatever ites are out there, whatever we're witnessing to. So verse 10. And Lot lifted his eyes and saw all the plain of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt towards Zoar. And Lot chose for himself all the plain of the Jordan. And Lot journeyed east, and they separated from each other. Lot's choice is very telling. He uses his eyes to determine his course. That looks good. I'm going there, What can he see? Only the material comes into your focus when you just make decisions with these two things. No thought of his family, no thought of spiritual harmony, no thought of any of that other stuff. He sees the Jordan Valley like it's the Garden of Eden. Now, he doesn't know anything about the Garden of Eden, but the story is still going through the culture. This must be what the Garden of Eden was like. Man, there's water, and there's trees, and there's grass, there's everything out there. It's so great. But it's very telling what else he sees it like. He sees it like Egypt. He sees it like the world. They may have escaped Egypt physically. God got them out of there. You guys get back where I told you. They have escaped Egypt physically, but they both have elements that they brought back in from Egypt. We're going to learn about a little girl named Hagar that Abraham brings in, and it's right in his household, right in his family. But Lot brings the desires of Egypt in his heart with him. We're to walk by faith and not by sight. Faith means we do not walk around just using these things. But we also walk around knowing truth, understanding the Scripture, understanding what the times are like, and where we fit in it, and how it's moving together. So it's wiser to look and to pray about what you want to do rather than just look and run. Right? Mm-hmm. Verse 12. Abraham dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent as far as Sodom. But the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinful against the Lord. Lot is playing a dangerous game. He goes down into this valley because it looked really cool. But Lot chooses that for himself. It wasn't the Lord's choice. It probably wouldn't have been Abraham's choice for him. He chose it. And he picks the very best that he can see. All about self. This Jordan Valley, even today, the Jordan Valley is the single most productive valley on planet Earth. It produces more vegetables and fruit and harvesty stuff than anywhere else. Imagine that. It's also surrounded by desert. Yet, in that valley, Admah, Gomorrah, Sodom, there's some evil out there. There's some wickedness out there. And Lot pitches his tent towards Sodom. He's drawn to the city. He's drawn to the culture. He's drawn to something. He is playing with fire here. We will find him later in the city, living in the city. And we will also find him sitting in the gates of the city, which means he's an official. He's a judge in the city. He's living among the wicked, and he is at home among the wicked. Now we got to be careful. We can't go too far here, because when you read Peter, 2 Peter chapter 2 says that Lot was righteous, who was oppressed by the filthy conduct of the wicked. For that righteous man, dwelling among them, tormented his righteous soul from day to day, seeing and hearing their lawless deeds. Oh, Peter says, don't go too far here. That guy's a believer. That guy's a righteous soul. But he lived in that place, and every day he saw what they were doing, and it tormented his soul. Everything he heard, everything he saw. You ever been in that place? Does the world kind of do that to you sometimes? You're like, I can't believe they voted for that. I can't believe they passed that, But he's living there. Perhaps, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Those people need Jesus, Those people need to hear about the Lord. So I'm going to move over there and be a witness. Was he ever a witness? Even his own kids, when the angels come to scoop him out of the city before judgment can fall, even his own kids laugh at him. You and the Lord. Like there's going to be judgment, Oh, Christian, be very careful. It's one thing to go into a place to worship, to witness there. It's another thing to live there, to dwell there, to set up, your camp there. It's this thing. In the end, it proves it all out, The one who sought all of the world's stuff loses it all. And the one who freely gives it away, who willingly gives it away, gains it all. There's a lesson there, right? Are you giving? Is your heart open? Is your hand open or closed? I used to play that game with some of my grandkids. I'd pour 3 or 4 M&Ms in, and they would close their hand like that. And they would pour some more over the top, and they would spill all over. Grandpa! And I would be like, yeah, open your hand. Yeah, but you might reach in there and grab one. Yeah, I might. But would you rather have an opening for more? Or miss the one, But if you set up shop in an evil and ugly culture, it will infect you. So Lot's choice is leading him astray. His heart is already astray. And he's going to lose any influence he may ever have. He doesn't win one soul to the Lord in that valley. You know how I know? You remember the little discussion Abraham has with the two angels or the three angels that come down? If there are 10 righteous in Sodom, Lord, will you spare it? Yep, I'll spare it for 10 righteous. Were there 10 righteous? No. And 6 of those people were Lot, his wife, and his kids. All he needed was a fool. All he needed was to influence just 4 others. His 2 daughters, when they escape, they will get dead drunk and sleep with him and become pregnant by him. And they think that's normal because where they grow up, oh, that's happening everywhere. That's just normal practice. Is that normal practice? Saul becomes this picture of what Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, a life built on wood, hay, and stubble. You know, we can build our life with gold, silver, and precious jewels that endure the fire, get through the fire, precious things. Or we can build our life with wood, hay, and stubble. That's Lot's life. And when he passes through judgment, there's this big flame up, you know, like when Mark gets in there. But the interesting thing is it ends by saying, you know, all his works are burned up, but his soul is saved. He's still making it into heaven. Just got no rewards when he gets there. Nothing to show for it. Abe knows something about the people of the plain, and he won't move that way. He's staying up on the hill. He can look down into the valley, but he's not going that way. Verse 14, and the Lord said to Abraham, after Lot had separated from him, lift up your eyes now and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. For the land which you see I give to you and your descendants forever. Notice this. Through circumstances, through strife, Abraham takes one more step of faith. He's separating from his family. Lot, we got to separate. Lot separates. Guess what happens? The Lord speaks again to Abraham. There's a reconnection. Oh, I see you're done with it. I gave you 3 things to do. You're finally at 3 things. Okay, now we can start moving on to part D, you know? Because the promises were to Abraham, not his nephew. Right? Now, Lot's a believer, but he doesn't have the zeal. He doesn't have the relationship that Abraham has, you know. And I don't know if you've ever hung around with people like that, but they can kind of, you know, they're a believer, but they're so weak, they're so needy, they're so dependent upon you that they become like a leech, you know. They're kind of sucking the life out of you to keep themselves alive. And they kind of hinder things. God wants to direct you this way, and they keep grabbing the wheel and pulling it over here. Yeah, but you've got to come over. You know? And they keep jerking the wheel over. And as they follow you, they're dragging half the world with them. I got this big train, I got all of this stuff. And it's only as they are weeded out of your life can God bring us new depth. Can He speak to us? Now God tells Abraham, now you look around with your eyes. Way different than what Lot does. Lot does it of his own choice. This is Abraham. This is God telling Abraham, you look around. And it's interesting. God isn't saying, look around at where you are. Notice what it says. It says, look around from where you are. And in the Hebrew, it's really cool. It says, now please lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are right now. It says, look north. Look north. You would see the Via Dolorosa or whatever it is, the main trade route coming into the country. Probably part of that way is the way he came into the country. You're looking back. This is how I came in. This is my beginnings. This was the long journey getting here. Look south. Imagine looking towards Egypt. Can he still see his footprints coming back from Egypt, you know? Whoops, that was an issue. Made a little problem there, you know. The foolishness thinking I was in control. The foolishness thinking I should run things. Do it my way. The half-truths. The danger I put my wife and my family in. The foolishness. He looks to the east. To the east. Here's the Jordan plain. The well-watered plain. Full of evil. Full of wickedness. But his heart is still there because his family is out there. He'd come from Ur of the Chaldees. If he looks way east, he goes back in his mind, that's where I was called. That's where God visited me. That's where he told me to come out. If he looks west, he looks to Bethel, the house of God. He looks to Jerusalem. He sees the future. What do you see if you look around from where God has you right now? Because that's what he's asking you to do. Look from where you are right now. What do you see? Do you see God's hand of faithfulness? Having you in every storm, in every trial, in every place you come through. What's he brought to your vantage point? Or what's he brought into your vision from the vantage point where you are at? Lift up your eyes and not just look with these, but with your spiritual eyes. What do you see? For all this land which you see, I will give you and your descendants forever. Now, that's relevant to the news today. Who owns Israel? Forever. Verse 16, and I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if a man could number the dust of the earth, then your descendants also could be numbered. This is quite a promise to a 75, 80-year-old guy who doesn't have any kids. You promised me, son. I'm still standing here. It's been some years. Still no kids. But Abe's been learning to walk by faith and not by sight. So to reassure Abraham, God remakes his promise, restates his promise to him. Aren't you glad he does that? Because he does that to Abraham and he does that to you and me. Over and over and over again, God's promises come. You're sufficient in me. I have finished all the work. I have paid the price. I will never leave you or forsake you. Can you hear God's promises? They're over and over again. And notice this. God speaks to him again, and there's not one hint of rebuke. Abraham, what was that Egypt thing? What were you thinking going on there? You caused us a lot of work. Man, I had to send some angels. I had to do some stuff to rescue you out. Not a single hint of rebuke. It's not well, Abraham, I thought you were my guy, but now, probably not. I'll put you on team B. I'll find a new team A guy. No. If God has called you, he has a plan for you. That's your plan. You're going with that plan. When we blow it, and when we return to him with our whole hearts, when we repent and confess, and when we get on our knees and go, Lord, I did it again, then none of that matters because that's gone. And he sets you back up in the very place you fell, and he says, now walk on. Walk on. If you've ever been a backslider, I can't even spell a word, so I don't know what that is. If you've ever gone AWOL on the Lord, welcome back. Let him stand you back up. Let him clean you off. And let him get you back on your course. You don't have to settle for second best. You can still be that best one. So verse 17. Arise. He's telling Abraham, lift up your eyes, look around, arise, walk in the land through its length and its width, for I give it to you. Then Abraham moved his tent and went and dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built an altar there to the Lord. As a token of faith, God says, go ahead, walk around, explore the land, check it out, because you own it, even though you don't have the title deed to any of it. We're to do the same thing. Right? In His Word, it says He has given us exceedingly great and precious promises. You exploring those? You hanging on to those? You check out all the little nooks and crannies of those promises? He has given us all things that pertain to life and godliness. You scoping those out? You checking out the valleys and the hilltops of that place? He's blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenlies through Christ. Every spiritual blessing. There are no other blessings available. You have it all. Have you even scratched the surface of exploring that? You know, walk around. Check it out. You know? And Abraham, you know, he's walking through the land. He's owning it. He's trusting. We're to be walking through those promises, owning them, trusting them. And he moves his tent to Mamre. It's interesting. It means vigor, fatness, strength. And it's in Hebron, which means fellowship or communion. So he finds this place where he's walking in fellowship and in the strength of the Lord. And he pitches his tent there and he builds an altar there. He knows this place is temporary. That's why he's just tenting. His need for an altered life is the same that we have. We have a need for an altered life. His altar was a pile of stones where he would take a lamb over and sacrifice it. Our altar is the cross of Christ, where the lamb was offered, the lamb, once and for all. And through that lamb, it's paid, it's finished, it's done, it's complete. And you are complete in that work in your faith through Christ. He comes to this place of fellowship, just getting alone with the Lord. Just spending time hanging out with Him, reading His Word, prayer. You know, I go for walks every day, and half the time I am just chatting up the Lord the whole time. And in that, He strengthens you. That's where you get strong. You feel like a weak Christian? Spend more time in His presence, in fellowship, in communion with Him. What might change if we dropped the Christian Christmas prayer list? What I mean by that is, God, I need this, and I need this, and I need this, and would you fix that? And we give Him the Christmas list, and we go off, you know, and do our thing. What if we just dropped that and really got real with Him and just sought His face and say, Lord, here am I. Lord, what's your heart? What's your will? Where do you want me? What's going on? Because the Lord knows every word on your tongue before you even say it. Do you need to list out your Christmas list? No. He knows those are there. What's He need you to do? Surrender. You know, bring your heart and your soul to Him. To His will. To His plan. You know, for His kingdom to come. For His will to be done. It seems like that's a prayer. Maybe we should, you know, take that up or something. That we might grow in the grace of the knowledge of Him. That we might understand what is the width, the length, the depth, the height of his love that surpasses understanding. That we would build our altar on that place. Not on my little wish list place. So, chapter 14. And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Eleazar, Chedorlaomer, he's my favorite guy. He's the cheese king, right? Chedorlaomer, yep. King of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations, that they made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and Beersheba. Those two guys have been hanging out at the bar too much, you know. King of Gomorrah, Sidab, king of Admah, Shemember, I can't quite remember what his name is, king of Zeboim, and King Bela, that is Zor. This is the first mention of war in the Bible. God describes conflict and God describes war in the Bible only as it relates to his plan and the redemption of his kids, of Israel or of the church in the New Testament. We won't hear about the Mongols and the Chinese dynasties and the Incas and the Mayans, and we won't hear about all of these wars around the world, only relative to his people. So he's aware of any warfare that you're going through, spiritual or physical, right? Because it's relative to Christ, and we are in Christ Jesus as believers. So Amraphel of Shinar. Shinar is the Chaldees, you know. Arioch, whom tradition tells us was one of the giants. He's king of Eleazar, that's east of the Dead Sea. Chedorlaomer, the cheese king, you know. He's king of Elam, that is Persia. And Tidal seems to be a Hittite name, and he's king of the nations. These four kings come to the Jordan plain. Now they have had a deal with the plain of the Jordan, all the cities of that plain, for the last 12 years, that they would pay them tribute. At the end of 12 years, the cities of the plain go, we don't want to pay them anymore. Blech, on you. So here comes the kings, right? We see some truth here, because there's 5 kings versus 4 kings, and anybody that does math would go, well, the 5 kings should win, but, you know, victory doesn't come by the sword or by numbers. Victory comes through the Lord, and the Lord's doing a little something here. Anyway, they're going to make war with Bera. Bera is king of Sodom, and his name means son of evil. What a great name for your king, right? Hey, son of evil, what should we do today? You know? And alongside of him is Beersheba, a great one or a tall one. He was probably also a giant in the land. Then you have Sibnah and Shemember and Bela, and they all joined together in battle. It says in verse 3, and these all joined together in the valley of Siddim, that is in the Salt Sea. Notice that's in parentheses. There was a Salt Sea apparently there before Sodom and Gomorrah gets smoked. So this is written afterwards by Moses. He puts in these little details for us. 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. And in the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him came and attacked the Rephaim in Asherah, Carnarvon, and the Zenzim in Ham, the Eman in Shaveth Kirjathim, and the Horites in the mountains of Seir as far as El Param, which is by the wilderness. So it's interesting to me, these 4 kings come in and they don't go right to the cities. Notice that? to attack the Rephaim. Now the Rephaim, that's a tribe of giants. As we walk through this, there are giants with the four kings, there are giants in the cities, and there are giants in the plain of the Jordan also. And so the incoming army goes and picks off what might be the allies of the cities. They go to this giant community and they wipe them out. They go to this giant community and wipe them out. They go to that giant community and wipe them out. Then they come for the cities. It's very interesting what they do. They go to the Horites, of Mount Seir, as far as El Paran, which is south in the desert. That's as far as you can see south in Israel. So, like I said, they go after the allies. The Rephaims, they mean the strong ones. The Zuzuim, those mean the powerful ones. The Emim, they mean the terrible ones. I don't know if you've ever read through Deuteronomy, but Deuteronomy chapter 2 lists the giants that are in the land when they come into the land. And it says, the Eman had dwelt there in times past, a people great and numerous, as tall as the Anakim. And the Anakim were the giants that the 12 spies, when they went in to spy out Canaan, that's who they saw, the Anakim. And they come out and say, we're like grasshoppers in their sight. They're huge. They also regarded as giants, they were also regarded as giants, like the Anakim. But the Moabites called them Emim. And then it goes on to say, that is also regarded as the land of giants. Giants formerly dwelt there, but the Amorites called them Zamzummim. Well, here they're just Zamzim. But I'm sure, the Amorites come around the corner one day and see a tribe of Zamzum, and they go, Zamzum! Did you see those guys? That's craziness there. So Deuteronomy gives us a little more instruction about that. Remember that before the flood there were giants. And it says, and afterwards also, these are the same guys. Verse 7. And they turned back and came to En-Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and attacked all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites who dwelt in Hazar Tamar. En-Mishpat is called the spring of judgment in the Hebrew. This is something God is arranging. God is bringing them to the spring of judgment. It's Kadesh to Moses' later days. And they attack the Amalekites and the Amorites who live there. Verse 8, and the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zor, went out and joined together in battle in the valley of Siddim against Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of nations, Arabel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Eliezer, 4 kings against 5. Isn't it funny how God has to remind you about that? So it's 4 verses 5. 4 verses 5. 5 to 4 seems like an okay advantage. You should be able to win this, but the battle doesn't belong to the swift nor the strong. Battle belongs to the Lord, and God is bringing them to this spring of judgment. See, they're already wicked. They're already evil. God is dealing with them in that. Verse 10, now the valley of Siddim was full of asphalt pits. You would think if you lived there, you would know that, right? And the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled. Some fell there. Some of them fall into these asphalt pits. It's like the tar pits up and around LA, or wherever they are. And you get into there, you get into the goo, you're gone. Just sink out of sight. And the remainder fled to the mountains. And they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their provisions and went their way. And they also took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom. Notice that. Where's he dwelling now? Oh, in Sodom. And his goods, and departed. And one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew. First time we have the word Hebrew in the Bible. For he dwelt at the tamarisk trees of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and brother of Aner, and they were allies with Abram. So Abraham, first time Hebrew, Eshcol and Abner were brothers of Mamre the Amorite. Mamre, the place is named after him, and that's his name. And that's where Abram's been dwelling. They have a little thing going on. You know, we watch each other's back. We're a little community here. They've been hospitable to him, and he's been hospitable to them. They were allies. Now the Hebrew, a lot of people want to take you back to Genesis chapter 10 and use the word Eber to try to get Hebrew out of. But in the other languages, like the Semaphore tablets that we found and the Egyptian hieroglyphics, the word is, I'm going to mispronounce it, Haborai. And Haborai were nomads. They were people that had flocks and herds and lived in tents. Because everybody else is a city person. We like living in the city because it's got walls and it's safe inside here. And here's these weirdos that live out there in a tent, just out in nature, you know, sleeping under the stars, and all they got's a bunch of herds and flocks. So they think the Haborai, the Hebrew, are crazy because they live in tents. They just live out there. Nomad kind of lives. And he's out there living like that, talking about the one true and living God, you know. He hasn't settled down because he's still looking for a city whose builder and maker is God. He hasn't found that city yet. He's not moving into a city that isn't that city. So he's tented, just hanging out by the fire, you know, roasting some marshmallows, or hot dog, you know, whatever it is. And somebody comes from Sodom and tells him what's going on. And verse 14. Now when Abraham heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his 318 trained servants who were born in his own house and went in pursuit as far as Dan. Here is a man of faith who is also prepared for war. Understand this. He has 318 servants trained in the art of war. When you read about a servant in the Old Testament, it's not demeaning like we get the idea it is today. Oh, they're slaves. Oh, they're this. Oh, they're that. You know, it's such an abusive situation. No. You read through Exodus 21, you read that if you were a servant, and you'd been the servant for 7 years, and you loved your master, and you loved the work, and you loved what he's brought. He brought you a wife, and now you have kids, and you like what's going on. You could choose and say, I love my servant, I love my master, I don't ever want to leave again. I love this guy, I love what I'm doing. You could choose that. And the master would take you to the door of his household, back you up against there, and take your ear, and he would put an awl. He would bore this hole in your ear. And he would put a gold earring in your ear. And then you would become this servant who had determined to stay with your master. See, he had found the right master. I don't know if you understand this about life, but this is what life is all about. Finding the right master. It's not about finding freedom, because you will never be free until you find the right master. I found a lot of wrong masters in my life. Emotions can master me at times, right? And that's an ugly master, because it changes like this. You know, you get the new Camaro, it's all polished up, you walk outside and somebody's scraped down the side. Your emotions, they're all over the place. You can try fame, you can try money, you can try sex, you can try alcohol, you can try drugs, addiction, pleasure. You can try all of these masters out, and they will all lead you into bondage. Not freedom, bondage. But now in Christ, I have the right master because he mastered me and then set me free. I don't understand it. I don't think you guys understand that. He set me free. I can choose to obey. I can choose to walk away. I can choose. I'm in full control of that idea. Oh, I choose him because I choose to follow him because I want to please him. He's my master. You don't have to do that. So this idea of a servant, that is what I am to the Lord. I'm his servant. That's not demeaning at all. The one in Exodus 21, he never wants to leave it. I've got it all right here as a servant. Jesus said this in Psalm 40. He said, "Sacrifice and offerings you did not desire. My ear you have opened." That's what he's talking about. God backed me up to the doorpost and put that gold earring in my ear. I'm your servant in this body. I serve you willingly. Right? So Abe, at some future point, he's gonna have this discussion with God. And he says, "God, I still don't have any kids. How about you take my eldest servant, Eliezer, and you make him my son, and you make him my heir?" That's how they were respected. That's great respect. I mean, here's this guy that's wealthy beyond, camels can't bear all the gold and the silver that he has. And Abraham imitates what the Lord would do in this situation. He hears about Lot. He's been taken captive. They're off, He hears about his brother being taken care of, and he arms his troops, and he goes after them to set him free. That's what Jesus has done for me, and that's what Jesus has done for you. He hears that you've been living in the plain of sin. Maybe right in the very city of sin, surrounding yourself with its trappings and all of that stuff. And you've become captive of sin, and now sin is dragging you off. The lying, the cheating, the drinking, the partying, the whatever it is. And he doesn't just hear about it and go, "Oh, I need to pray for brother so-and-so. I need to pray for her because, she's kind of twisted that way, so, she needs some prayer." He doesn't do that. What does Abraham do? What did Jesus do for us? Jesus came down and took on flesh, dwelt among us, went to the cross and paid it all, bought us back. What does Abraham do? He hears, he moves. He goes. As I read that, it kind of hits me hard in my heart. Because how many times have I heard about somebody, "Oh, did you hear about so-and-so? Looks like they're getting into this," or "I saw them over there the other night." And you feel it, but I don't do anything. I didn't go. I didn't go to rescue. I didn't get myself all armored up and step out. It makes me reflect how many times I heard about somebody stumbling and all I did was pray. I wasn't moved with compassion. When you read through the Gospels, Jesus was moved with compassion. And that idea of moving is moving with compassion, right? Doing something about it. So Abe hears, he arms his 318 servants, they head into the free, and they pursue him as far as Dan. Now what's interesting is, I have stood at the gate in Dan. It's the oldest mud brick gate in the world. It's over 4,000 years old. Brenda and I stood there, looked at it, like, what is this? It's kind of just a big mound of stuff, you know? And Abraham calls after his nephew at that place. He calls into the city. Hey, is my nephew Lot inside there? Did you see, Chedorlaomer, a cheese guy, come by? Did he leave orange fingerprints everywhere? Is he getting, what? He's tracking him down. And it says when he gets close, he divides his forces against them by night, and he and his servants attacked them and pursued them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus. When he gets close, when darkness comes on, he divides his forces, he surrounds the camp, he attacks them, and they're discomfited is the Old Testament word. They don't know what's going on. They don't know if there's thousands of people out there or 100 people. They don't have a clue. And they end up fleeing away and leaving everything, and they're able to take everything and bring it back. He recaptures everything. So he brought back all the goods and also brought back his brother Lot and his goods, as well as the women and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the valley of Sheba. That is the king's valley, after his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him. And then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. We're going to have to stop here, but I want you to notice a couple of things. After a great victory, who comes to meet you? Who comes to meet you after the great victory? Here Abraham's coming back victorious. He's got all this stuff with him. And the son of evil comes out to meet him in that place. Well, be careful about letting your guard down here, right? But also Melchizedek comes, who is a type of Christ, who is like unto Christ, we're told. He's offering bread and wine, What's the lesson for us? When you experience some great victory, not the time to kick back. Not the time to go, whoa, everything's coming up roses now. Hang on, this is going to be great. We are just as dependent upon Jesus the day after a great victory as we were the very first day we got saved. Mm-hmm. We are that dependent upon him today. How desperate were you then? You're just as desperate today. Oh, you think you're not, but you are. Because the victory is never ours. It wasn't Abraham's plan. It wasn't his strategy. It wasn't that he had the 318 greatest armed guys in the world. The victory belongs to the Lord. And because we have victory, we will always be visited by the evil one. But on the other hand, we're always visited by the one who reminds us of his broken body and of his shed blood. And this is what holds you in this place. So we'll have more on that next week. Father, as we, Lord, just go through this word, Lord, I just think about that we would have the heart, that we would have your Spirit in such abundance that when we hear of a brother or a sister going astray, being taken captive by some sin, by some, whatever it is, God, that we wouldn't just sit around, but Lord, that we would move and be moved by compassion, to love them, to draw them back, to fight for them. And yes, part of that fighting is on our knees. Lord, I also think about how we hang on to your stuff, the stuff that you've given us. When we stand from the place where we are standing right now, and when we look around, are we holding on to that thing with everything we got? Or is all of that stuff really yours? And we're just holding on loosely, so that whoever comes by, they might need it. Maybe our nephew needs it. Maybe maybe our cousin, maybe our brother, maybe our sister. And we can freely give because freely we have received. Lord, move upon our hearts. Lord, cause us to be your people and to represent you rightly in this fallen world. Lord, bless us and encourage us this week. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.